Hello and welcome to our second lesson in the B4 topic. Last lesson we looked at the structure of the blood, we discussed how it's defined as a tissue, and we spoke about what each constituent part of the tissue did. So what each part of the blood did and its roles. To start us off today, we've got three diagrams here. We've got one person who's cut their arm and blood is spurting out. We've got a person who's cut the back of the hand, and although there's a lot of blood, it's just dribbling out. And we've got somebody who's cut their finger quite badly, and the blood is dripping out. I would like you to pause the video at this point, please, and I would like you to have a think about why these injuries result in such different blood loss. Okay, so you should have paused the video and had a thought about this question that's currently on the board. Now, the reason that we get different blood loss is because the first one, where blood is spurting out, the person has cut an artery. And arteries are big blood vessels that pump blood under high pressure. On the back of the hand, the blood was dribbling out, although there was quite a lot. It wasn't spurting out as badly as the first one, but there was a lot of blood still coming out. So the blood vessels are still big, but the blood is under much lower pressure. These are what we call veins. And the final one on the finger is a capillary. The person has cut a capillary in the finger, and it's so small that there's much less blood loss and it's under much lower pressure. So today's lesson, we're going to be looking at these three types of blood vessel. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to recall what the functions of the main blood vessels in mammals are. You should be able to explain what a double circulatory system is, and you should be able to evaluate what the adaptations of the different blood vessels are. So these are our learning objectives. I would like you to write the lesson title in your book as you would for any other lesson with me. Put the date, and we will make a start. So, all living things that are multicellular need what's known as a mass transport system. If you're unicellular, you can just absorb the things you need by diffusion. So if you're a unicellular organism and you need oxygen and glucose, you can get those substances into you via diffusion. You can get rid of waste via diffusion. So we can start by saying that unicellular organisms exchange materials with their environment by diffusion. Now, there's two major words in this sentence. The first one being unicellular organism. We said in B1 that unicellular means you are only made up of one cell. And the other word is diffusion. Diffusion is the movement of substances from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. We can also add to diffusion, we can say osmosis, and we can say active transport. Okay? So if you are a unicellular organism, you don't really have a problem getting the things you need because you can just absorb them from your environment. However, if you are multicellular, the distance from internal cells to the environment is much bigger, and therefore you cannot rely on diffusion. So we can say, and I'm going to put it in red because it's important, that multicellular organisms need transport systems as the internal cells are too far away from the external environment, too far away from the external environment to absorb substances directly. To absorb substances directly. Okay, so to just picture this, if you're a single-celled organism, you can absorb everything you need, such as oxygen and glucose, C6H12O6. You can absorb those by simple diffusion, and you can get rid of your waste by simple diffusion. Okay, so you can get rid of waste quite easily. However, if you're a multicellular organism, and you happen to be the cells in the middle of the organism, you can't touch the external environment. Therefore, you can't get rid of things or gain things by diffusion alone. So, such as these cells on the outside, they'll be able to get oxygen, they'll be able to get glucose. However, these ones in the middle, so these ones that I'm shading in orange now, would not be able to get what they need. Therefore, transport systems need to deliver the substances needed by these cells. So we can say, we can write down that internal cells require transport systems to deliver / remove substances for them. Okay. Now, there are different types of transport system that you need to know about. So I'm going to briefly touch upon them here. Okay. So we can put the subheading types of transport system. And we can underline it because that's a subheading. I am going to have a quick swig of water because I'm really thirsty. So, the first type of transport system is what's known as an open circulatory system. Open circulatory system. Now, an open circulatory system is where blood does not flow through blood vessels. It just goes into the body cavity of the organism. So we can define this as where a transport medium, I'll explain what that is in a minute, where a transport medium does not flow in blood vessels. Okay, the reason I say transport medium is because insects which use this type of circulatory system don't have blood. They have something called hemolymph. So we can't really say that they have blood. So we use the word transport medium. So as I've just alluded to, an example of an open circulatory system would be insects. So e.g. insects. The second type of circulatory system is a closed circulatory system. Closed circulatory system. Closed circulatory system. Now, a closed circulatory system is where the transport medium, such as blood, flows in blood vessels. It does have blood vessels. So while this one over here does not have blood vessels, closed do. So we can say where transport mediums and we can put in brackets this time blood flows in blood vessels. Flows in blood vessels. Now, there are two types of closed circulatory system. We're not going to talk about them today. We're going to save that for next lesson. However, I will just touch upon it. Closed circulatory system, there's two types. We've got single closed and double closed. Single and double. We'll talk about that more next lesson, but it's worth mentioning here. Examples of closed circulatory systems would include fish. So, e.g. fish and mammals. And mammals is what we're going to focus on today because we're a mammal and we need to talk about the structure of the blood vessels. So we've said so far that unicellular organisms exchange material with their environment by diffusion, osmosis and active transport. That is fine because the cell is in constant contact with the environment. However, multicellular organisms, organisms made up of lots of cells, need transport systems as the internal cells are too far away from the external environment to absorb substances directly. We then use this example. This is our unicellular organism, just absorbing the things it needs and getting rid of the things it doesn't. But in the multicellular organism, it's only the cells on the outside that can get what they need. The ones on the inside can't. Therefore, they need a transport system that deliver the things that they need to them and remove the things they don't. We've said that there's two types of transport system. There is an open circulatory system where the transport medium does not flow in blood vessels. This is seen in insects. And we've got closed circulatory systems where the transport medium, such as blood, flows in blood vessels. There's two types, a single closed circulatory system and a double closed circulatory system. And we've said examples of this are fish and mammals. So, if we can refresh our screen, turn it back to black so that it's easier to read, and we can say that, and I'm going to put it in red, in mammals, it'd help if I could spell mammals, it's M-A-M-M-A-L-S. In mammals, there are three types of blood vessel in their double closed circulatory system. And we can put ... The three that we need to talk about are arteries, there are capillaries, and there are veins. Now, to just illustrate this, I have got an image that I'd like to add. It's not in here, so it's in downloads. And we got these ones. Where's the other ones we wanted? Not there, so it must be in documents. Date modified. Okay, we'll just have to. In fact, isn't it in recent? I did put this to one side. Oh, there we go. So the diagram that I want us to use is this one here, and this is on the PowerPoint. It is something you can refer back to, and it shows the sequence that blood flows through. So when blood leaves the heart, so this is blood leaving the heart, blood leaving the heart, the blood first enters the arteries. So the first blood vessel that the blood encounters after leaving the heart is the arteries. They then go through something called arterioles, which we won't look into. You may wish to do that in your own time. And they enter something called capillaries. Once they go from the capillaries, they enter out into venules, and finally veins, which is the third one. The blood then returns to the heart. So blood returns to the heart. Okay? So in your book, you may wish to draw a diagram where you draw the heart. It doesn't have to be like this one. It can be a cartoony heart, and you can draw an arrow going around to arteries, capillaries, veins, and then back to the heart. Okay? So the sequence in which blood flows, it goes from the arteries to the capillaries to the veins. Now, for the remainder of this lesson, we're going to first look at the structure of arteries, we're then going to look at the structure of capillaries, and we're then going to look at the structure of veins. Okay? So, let's refresh our page. Let's turn it back to black. Put the subheading, structure of arteries. Structure of arteries, and underline it. Now I have got an image that we can add to here. If we go to downloads, I know it's definitely there because I stole this off a website, and we've got our structure of an artery. Okay, and I'm going to make that a bit bigger, I think. There we go. We'll put it over here. The first thing we need to say about arteries is that arteries carry blood away from the heart under high pressure. So we can put that in red because it's important. We can say that arteries carry blood away from the heart under high pressure. Under high pressure. Okay? So the arteries carry blood away from the heart under high pressure. That's in red because it's important, and it's so important I'm going to put a speech bubble around it. Okay, you need to know that because then you need to know that the adaptations allow it to do this. So we can also add to this by saying that adaptations of arteries allow them to withstand high pressure. Okay? So the adaptations of arteries allow them to withstand high pressure. And some of the adaptations are shown over here on this diagram. Okay? So we can talk about some of these here. We can put the first one. We can say that they have a thick outer wall and a thick inner elastic wall. Okay? So they have thick walls to allow them to stretch under high pressure. Okay, so they have these thick elastic walls that allow them to stretch under high pressure. They also have what's known as a narrow central lumen, and that brings us to another key word, the word lumen. Lumen. A lumen is the hole in the middle of a blood vessel. So the hole in the middle of blood vessels. So if you get a straw and you look down the middle of a straw, that would be the lumen of the straw. In this diagram here, the lumen would be this part. It would be the hole found in the middle of the blood vessel. Okay? Now, arteries have very small lumens which maintain a high pressure. So they have a small lumen which maintains high blood pressure. We'll explain why that's important next lesson. But for now, you just need to know that they have this tiny lumen which maintains the high blood pressure. So the arteries carry blood away from the heart under high pressure. Their adaptations keep the blood at a high pressure and they allow the artery to withstand the high pressure. So they have a thick wall to allow them to stretch while under high pressure, and they have small lumens which maintain high blood pressure. One thing we need to point out here, and I'm going to add it in red because it's important, the wall of the artery is impermeable. That means nothing can leave the blood and nothing can get in. Okay? So arteries have impermeable walls. What we mean by that is nothing can get into the blood and nothing can get out. The blood cannot leave the artery, it can only stay within the artery. So if we start having a look at veins now, if we refresh our screen and have a look at veins, so we can put the subheading structure of veins. Structure of veins, and for this one I've got two images I want to add. Okay, so add image, downloads, veins. Okay, I need to add them twice. So we've got one diagram that looks like this. I want it fairly big so that we can read it. This is on, in fact it's not on the PowerPoint, so you need to read it from here. And our second image looks like this. And we can put this up here somewhere, like that. Okay. So veins carry blood back to the heart under low pressure. So veins carry blood back to the heart, back to the heart under low pressure. Okay, so we can put that in a bubble again because all of the adaptations of a vein allow it to do its job. It allows it to bring the blood back to the heart under low pressure. So we can say that adaptations of veins allow them to bring blood back to the heart under low pressure. Under low pressure. ... So some of the adaptations of veins is that they, first of all, remember the lumen, we did define it on the previous slide, is the hole in the middle of a blood vessel. The lumen for this one is found here. Veins have a large lumen to reduce friction on blood. So the blood will flow more smoothly through a vein with less friction. So we can say that they have a small lumen, a large lumen. They have a large lumen to reduce friction of blood. Essentially, that makes it easier for the blood to flow without rubbing against the walls of the vein. Veins also have valves, and the valves are shown on this diagram here, there and there. This is an open valve at the top and a closed valve at the bottom. Okay. Now, valves ensure that blood flows in one direction. It won't let the blood go back in the opposite way. The blood can only pass through a valve and then it can't go back. Pass through another valve, can't go back. Pass through another valve, can't go back. So we can say that they have valves, to prevent backflow of blood. And that can be our next keyword. I will put it somewhere at the top because I haven't got much room. I've made these diagrams way too big. So a valve, it's not going to work there, is it? Because it's in white. So we'll have to put it here. A valve prevents the backflow of blood. Prevents the backflow of blood. So essentially, they force the blood to flow in one direction. And finally, they have thin walls that muscles contract on to push blood through the vein. So we can say that they have thin walls, that muscles contract on. Muscles contract on. To push blood through the vein. So veins carry blood back to the heart under low pressure. They are adapted to do this because they have a large lumen which reduces the amount of friction of the blood as it tries to flow back. They have valves that prevent the backflow of blood, and they have thin walls that allow muscles to contract on them to push the blood through. Now, to sort of visualise this, I have got to use black on this diagram because I haven't got much room. If you think of you standing there, gravity is trying to pull your blood down. So I'm just going to put a G with an arrow to show that gravity is trying to pull your blood down. When your heart pushes blood through your arteries, the blood goes down to your big toe. It then loses all of the pressure. It then needs to get back all the way up your leg, all the way up your body, back to your heart. To do this, the blood is pushed through veins by muscles contracting on them. The blood is pushed through a valve and then it can't drop back down, through another valve and then it can't drop back down, through another valve and then it can't drop back down, all the way until it gets back to your heart. Okay? The blood that comes from your brain through veins doesn't really have that problem because gravity will pull the blood back down towards your heart. But particularly blood that needs to go up against gravity, this is really useful. Right then, so let's have a think about the last one, because I am aware that I've spoken for ages. Let's have a think about capillaries, and then this lesson is finished. So put the subheading, please. Structure of capillaries. And as we've done for the others, I have prepared an image that we can add. So file, add image, capillaries. And it looks like this. Okay, we can make this one a bit bigger because that's the only one I need to use. So in capillaries, this is where diffusion takes place. Oxygen is taken from the blood into the surrounding cells, and carbon dioxide and urea is taken away. Capillaries are the only blood vessel that is permeable. So I should have said on the previous one, can't go back now, veins are impermeable. So while arteries and veins are impermeable, capillaries are permeable. So we can say, and I'll change to red, that capillaries allow the exchange of materials between the blood and surrounding tissues. Okay. Now we can say, because we've also said, that while arteries and veins are impermeable, capillaries are permeable. Capillaries are permeable. Okay. Now, some adaptations of capillaries. So, adaptations of capillaries. There are lots of them. So this increases the surface area across which diffusion can happen. So lots of them to increase surface area across which diffusion can happen. Across which diffusion can happen. We've got that their walls are very thin, so their walls are 1 cell thick to decrease diffusion distance. So its walls are 1 cell thick to decrease diffusion distance. To decrease diffusion distance. And finally, they only allow a few blood cells through at a time to allow every cell to do some diffusion. So only let a few red blood cells through at a time. So all can carry out diffusion. Okay, so capillaries, there's lots of them. The walls are 1 cell thick to decrease diffusion distance, and they only let a few red blood cells through at a time. So if we return back to our learning objectives, you should be able to tell me the adaptations of different blood vessels. You should be able to tell me what a closed circulatory system is. We'll talk more about a double closed circulatory system next lesson. And you should be able to tell me the functions of the major blood vessels. If you have a look on the PowerPoint, there is this diagram here which compares the differences between the types of blood vessel. There is some diagrams that I've used and others that I haven't. The answers to all the worksheets are on the PowerPoint. You need to work through the worksheets now, please, and then mark your own answers. As always, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me on Google Classrooms or by dropping me an email, and I will see you next time. All the best.